This is Infection, the survival podcast recorded live on Tuesday, February 1st, 2022, episode 368. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to another edition of Infection, the survival podcast. Infection is your source for the latest information on survival video games. My name is Nick Craig. You can follow me on various social media platforms by heading on over to my website, nickcraig.net, and check out the Wilmington's Morning News podcast. Dark and early every morning from 6 to 9 a.m. Eastern. You can check that out by searching Wilmington's Morning News on your favorite podcast app or heading to nickcraig.com. But don't worry, it's not all about me. We got to go to infectionpodcast.com, where you'll find all of our, at least most of our episodes. And you also find out a little bit more about the show, including my co-host joining us as he does each and every week, Brian with an I, Aldrich. Hello, Brian. How are you?
I'm doing very well, and I'll get my contact info out of the way really quick. If you want to get me at Brian Aldrich on Gab, Parler, and Getter, and of course my blog, biteoftech.com. First of all, I encourage you to go to infectionpodcast.com and check out on the right-hand side where we got Subscribestar, BitChute, DLive. We got a lot of links you can go to, but first, I don't know where our Discord link went. I'll put it back on there before the end of the show is here. It's disappeared, but we'll have a link up there for Discord, and then you'll be able to join our chat channels for news. We got a workout channel. We got ARC servers, a lot of different things that you can do on there. But if you think there's a topic we're not covering, I would encourage you to jump in there, throw that link in the news channel. We cover all those before the live show, and it allows you to go and be a part of the show. Maybe there's a game we're not covering, or an event that's happened that week. We really encourage you to put that in there because that lets you be a part of it and help us to make sure we're always on top of things. If you want to watch the show, you can do that through the Twitch, YouTube, BitChute, and DLive links. Those are live and have recordings after the fact. If you're going to listen to the audio-only version, just go to the lower right-hand side. Those are not live, but as soon as we finish the show, those get uploaded, and you have the ability to listen. So lower right-hand side, whatever kind of platform you want. If you are going to listen, I encourage you to go to the particular episode you're listening to, because we've got links for every single topic that we discussed in that week. So whatever it is that we discuss, maybe there's a video that we show or a document that we reference, all of those links are there. And I encourage you to check it out because it's really helpful for when you're listening and can't see some of the things that we're describing. If you want to support the show, we've got a support tab up top or infectionpodcast.com/support, where Subscribestar, Humble Bundle, Amazon Prime gaming subs, all kinds of things that you can do to help support the show. And that's all hopefully going towards the convention, that once those open up and they actually let you show up in person, things go back to normal, then we'll be able to have some of those funds and actually use them, maybe for equipment, where we're staying, all kinds of things.
Yeah, other extracurricular activities, all of that fun stuff that takes place at our various conventions and trips. So we had some issues with the publishing of last week's episode. Not sure what went on there, but it should be up now, episode 367. Yep. So if you notice an issue with that or any of the further episodes, just ping me on Discord or send an email to contact@infectionpodcast.com if you see anything odd, and let us know. All right, Brian, we've got to start off with Sony. Now, for the past couple of weeks, and really the past couple of months, have talked and really highlighted the power play and the power move that Microsoft is putting on the gaming industry by buying studios and acquiring studios like Bethesda, which includes id Software and all of their games, and just recently, just a few weeks ago, the merger of Activision Blizzard under the Microsoft umbrella as well. Now, there's some FTC questions with that. The trade's it's likely going to go through. If not, they'll break it up and then Microsoft will buy it. I think it's pretty safe to say Microsoft will own Activision and or Blizzard or some part of it in the very near future. So I was completely shocked when I received a message from our friend Nisco, sent me a PM on Discord, I believe it was yesterday, with a huge announcement that Sony is buying Bungie.
Yes.
The Destiny 2 developer, for a whopping
also
$3.6
a Halo developer.
Old Halo developer. Yeah, they're not making current Halo games. And
they don't have any rights to it.
No. No, those
Yeah.
rights are
That
all
would
owned
have
by
been funny
Microsoft.
though. Imagine if they would have purchased like the
Halo.
ability to make Halo out from under Microsoft as kind of like a thank you for taking those two exclusives that we had
Yeah.
in the Activision deal. Thank you very much. I thought that was where they're going until I started reading a little bit closer and was like, okay, so uh, this is a lot of money for pretty much one game and a studio.
Bingo.
That
That's exactly
I
where I
was kind
wanted
of
to go with this.
surprised. $3.6 billion. Sure, that studio is producing a pretty good game, but they're producing one game, and it's a game that's just kind of putting out DLCs. Uh, these have been included in the Game Pass. I'm curious what's going to happen with that. Now supposedly it's operating independently under Sony, right? What does that mean? Are they going to have any say to pull it from the game store and make restrict that license? Because they totally could. I mean, it's the exact
Absolutely.
same thing that Microsoft's been doing to them.
Yeah. And I think that's the key thing to note. Now, important to note that Microsoft paid upwards of $70 billion for Activision Blizzard, and Sony paid, let's just round it up to $4 billion for Bungie. But my question has been this whole time, this seems like nothing more than a toddler throwing a tantrum, Brian. I don't see any other thing about this. It's not only do you have a franchise, Destiny 2 is an older game. I mean, it's free to play now. They've got one IP. Was Destiny, the IP, worth $4 billion to Sony? My guess is no, but they didn't want Microsoft to buy them as well, so they opened up their checkbook and wrote a $3.6 billion check to purchase it. It seems like a toddler throwing a temper tantrum, Brian. This is, to me, this is nothing more than desperation.
Well,
I'm sure they were in the process of doing it. Or Microsoft didn't want to spend $4 billion for Destiny, because I don't think the game's worth that.
They knew the value. Exactly. That's exactly what I was going to say. They know the value of this studio and that game, because that game is kind of a linear track game. If they don't put out another expansion, people are going to quit playing it. It's an open world, kind of an MMO style game that doesn't have a lot of the MMO features. It's fun to play, but it is somewhat limiting. Now, there are hardcore players that raid in that and do all kinds of things, but it's just a very different style of game. And I don't know if Sony, I'm hoping that they're going to continue having them produce and put out content and not change anything, because Sony, it's been going fine as far as the studio. They've been growing that one game, but to be safe, they need to switch out and get more games. I mean, you can't rely as a studio on one game, because something can happen. Look at Activision Blizzard. It's some turmoil in the company can happen. If you only have one game to rely on for your total income, and they strike, like players strike, whatever
happens, Fallout.
Yeah, you'll be done as a studio, and then that studio becomes nearly worthless.
Well,
it's about the talent, and it's about what they can produce.
And I think that's what I want to talk about here, because since 2010, Bungie has released 2 games, Destiny 1 in 2014 and Destiny 2 in 2017. Now, Destiny 2 does have a large player base, don't get me wrong. And from what I've heard, I've played a lot of
content.
A lot of people really enjoy Destiny. People still grind and play Destiny constantly. So not taking anything away from Destiny.
My wife and I, we played Destiny a bit on console, and there's a lot of content there. But the thing is, once you've gone through it all, you're at the stage of, okay, now what? It's a game that has to continuously put out content to stay relevant. If it stops and stutters at all, it's no longer relevant. That's my concern with this type of a game. It's not like a game where you can sell it forever on the marketplace. Let's say let's say they had a game like GTA, where it's just a lot of people play it and it's just really popular by itself. You can keep selling that game without the online piece, and you'll still keep selling it for 10 years. This game, you can't. It relies on everything still going, because it's relying on an active player. But sure, there's going to be people playing the old content, but your hardcore players that continue playing daily, they need new content, or else they have it's about getting, it's randomized gear. So there's a lot of things they can repeat, but there's only a certain amount of gear they can get from the content that's there right now. They're at a cap, a lot of them.
I want to read a little bit from the press release. This is the CEO of Sony Interactive Entertainment, Jim Ryan. He said, "We've had a strong partnership with Bungie since the inception of the Destiny franchise, and I couldn't be more thrilled to officially welcome the studio to the PlayStation family. This is such an important step in our strategy to expand the reach of PlayStation to a much wider audience. We understand how vital Bungie's community is to the studio and look forward to supporting them as they remain independent and continue to grow. Like Bungie, our community is a core to PlayStation's DNA, and our shared passion for the gamer and building the best place to play will now evolve even further. So a couple things to take away from that statement. Their strategy to expand the reach of PlayStation. I don't understand. I'm not saying that the move was, I'm just basing it on that sentence. What does Bungie, or rather Destiny, is a game that is available on PC, PlayStation, and Xbox. And I think it's on Stadia too.
Yeah.
How are they going to expand the reach of the PlayStation ecosystem and PlayStation universe with Destiny 2?
Well, here's my thought. What other PlayStation kind of exclusives are open world like this? I've been trying to think of another one that they have that's like one of their main titles that is an exclusive PlayStation open world, lots of players connected. Everything is like a track, linear story.
God of War, just Uncharted.
God of War, it's all down a track. Everything is down a
Last
track.
of Us,
this is, sure, it's got some track to it, but this is the most open world game that I've really seen them do as an exclusive that I can think of. Maybe that's it. Something that's open, between, that has multiplayer between all platforms. I just feel like there's some reason, because they've been lacking in that. I think they put so much into the whole VR. Because remember, when we went and saw Sony's booth, what did we see half of their booth the last time we went? Do you remember what half Sony's booth was?
I honestly don't remember. It was a lot of weird indie games.
Well, okay, they had a center thing of indie games. And then around the whole outside was all the VR stuff.
VR stuff, yeah.
So half of their stuff was VR in that. Now, have you seen a lot of advertising for VR games lately? I mean, you haven't seen a lot of VR really.
No, but Sony did just announce they're doing their next PSVR 2 or whatever they're calling it.
Yeah. So I mean, I think they have a VR thing, and then they have this kind of a track story mode style game that they usually do, and people make. And then this is something different. So that's what I'm kind of thinking. That may be the path that they're viewing as, here's a developer that knows how to do a game that's like an MMO on a PlayStation and all these other consoles. That's a selling point, because I haven't seen very many of those. There's a couple of them. They're mostly Chinese companies, and all of these that are doing these MMOs on consoles. But there aren't very many that are American, that are making games for America, right? That Americans are playing, that are like this, that aren't like niche little games. This is a big one that's been openly accepted by almost all the community. Like most players who don't even like MMOs play this game.
Yeah, from the hardest core gamer to the most casual gamer, Destiny has got a very wide net.
You can play anything in it. It's got stuff for casual people. You can run around and shoot things and collect things. Or you can try to get to the end game and play this super hardcore raiding style game that has a lot of puzzles and is very complicated. It's all in there. It's just how far you take it.
So I think the question, at least for me, goes back to, was this a desperation move by Sony as to essentially just try and grab a couple of studios before Microsoft gobbled them all up and made them exclusives? But as it seems right now, and this news is still very fluid, right? This came out yesterday, but the Bungie did release a Q&A looking answering some questions, and Bungie does have a new franchise game in development right now, a new IP.
Yeah.
And the question on their Q&A says, Bungie's future game currently in development, will that become a PlayStation exclusive? The answer is no. No, we want the worlds we are creating to extend to anyone, anywhere people play games. We will continue to be self-published, creatively independent, and will continue to drive one unified Bungie community. Now, that could change, but I would presume that was a pretty big part of the back and forth negotiations between Sony and Bungie. So if that's the case, Brian, if they just spent $4 billion to acquire Bungie, they get Destiny 2, which is already on, they're not going to rip it off of Xbox and PlayStation. The game came out in 2017. But if
Plus,
they're
people
new
already
games,
purchased it. They're going to have to continue putting out updates anyways for those
exactly.
customers.
So their new game that is supposedly going to be coming out, which, by the way, Bungie makes phenomenal games. I'm not taking anything away from Bungie, is not going to be a Sony exclusive.
Yeah.
Why the hell did they pay $4 billion for the company?
That's probably why, is because look at this game. This studio has put something out that's actually cross-console, and Sony, most of the people doing it on consoles, on the Xbox and PlayStation, have been doing it poorly. I mean, you've got a couple games that have actually pulled it off, where you have cross-console that works, and it's actually
so maybe it's
all
some
the
of the
features
tech.
work. Yeah, I think that they are probably getting this company for that. They've actually put out, and it seems to run the same on every single platform. And that's a pretty good bet. If you got a company that's done that, and then you've had no hiccups where the community's been outraged because it doesn't work. It's kind of like when I think Epic bought Rocket League. I kind of viewed that purchase as exactly the same thing. Rocket League had really good tech that they built on Unreal Engine. Epic didn't want to rebuild it. They bought it. I feel like these guys have a lot of technology. They have all the knowledge of producing it for every single platform. And, it works really well on PlayStation. It works really well on Xbox. If they're not buggy. I think that's the selling point of this, is they wanted a company that could probably help them do the things that they currently don't have people in the company doing, rather than hiring them one at a time. You have a whole studio ready to go and put out a game.
Is it possible that Sony bought this and spent $3.6 billion in this acquisition just because the fact that they didn't want Bungie's new game to potentially be bought up by Microsoft
Xbox.
And not allowed on their platform? Do you think that's a possibility?
I think they know that would have.
A gamble?
I think Microsoft would have purchased this in an instant if they realized that Sony was this close to purchasing it.
Well, I have a feeling, if I had to guess, this is complete and total speculation at this point. There's no evidence to back this up, but that's never stopped us in the past. I would guess, Brian, Bungie was pretty hell-bent on saying, we are not going to be releasing single-platform games. And I'm confident that if Microsoft, and I'm sure Microsoft was in talk, if they were in talks with Activision Blizzard, they were sure as hell in talk with Bungie.
They talked it, yeah.
And if I had to guess, Bungie was unwilling to agree to just making their game available on the Xbox and the PC, and that's why Microsoft didn't want to acquire them. Microsoft is trying to own the gaming marketplace, from the console to the smart TV to the cell phone to the computer. That's what they're trying to do with Game Pass and streaming and all of that other stuff. And if they don't have exclusives, well, then they're just everybody else. Now, the reason Netflix is so popular, because of the exclusives. And if I had to guess, Bungie was unwilling to maybe Bungie was unwilling to agree to a term like that. So that caused Microsoft to say, screw it, we're not interested. We're not going to pay $4 billion for you if we don't get to just have your games on our platform. That would be my guess.
Yeah.
So,
well, and Joe, for instance, one thing Joe mentioned in chat, he says 5 years on, they might have a game ready for. There might be something in this deal that this company has that they're producing or ready to produce or ready to release. That is the selling point. That makes, we may be looking at this now saying $3.6 billion. Man, why? But there could be a product that they showcased to maybe Microsoft and Sony and said, hey, this is right. We're about to release this. And that added to the value. There could be something we don't see, but so far I'm not seeing it 100%, because it still just seems a little bit strange. The whole deal. Do you think that maybe Sony is hedging its bets that it might not be a hardware producer in the future very much longer?
I'm sorry, say that again.
That they Sony? Do you think that Sony is maybe hedging their bets that they may not be in the hardware market, at least a super profitable hardware market, very much longer?
They won't be. Neither will Microsoft.
Well, how are you going to protect? How are you going to make it so Sony still is a name? You're going to become a publishing studio purely. Then you need studios that have the ability to produce a lot of high quality IPs, right? Okay, these guys can. They're going to have to buy studios that have the ability to produce content, because they don't have the ability to risk it on indies right now. I think that they're running out of time, and I think that they're doing everything they can. This is one of the last second deals. We're running out of large studios to purchase. I mean, honestly.
Well, No, we are. And I saw
China's
this.
China's been buying them up. Microsoft's been buying up. Sony's starting to buy them up. A lot of these other studios have been purchased that have produced AAA level content.
I saw this meme floating around the internet of the updated 2022 game publisher tier list, and it's Microsoft, PlayStation, and then the New York Times, who just bought that Wordle game or whatever people are playing. So, so I have a feeling though that we are heading towards dangerous territories here, Brian.
Yeah.
Where literally everything is going to be bought, and I think the jury is still out as to whether these big acquisitions are going to be good or bad. I don't know, but I can tell you that if all of these large, now here's the thing, all of these large studios, Bungie, Activision Blizzard probably not so much, but Bethesda, they all started as not large developers, right? They were small teams, small developers. Now it was a very different era of gaming in the 90s and early 2000s when these companies were making their games. But even with that said, there will be other large companies that will spawn up in the future because smaller developers will continue to make games. There will be a blockbuster hit, and they will be a big studio. And then the question will be, does Microsoft buy them? Does Sony buy them? Does Google buy them? Does Amazon buy them? I mean, there's more players in this than just Sony and Microsoft. But I'm still having some concerns. Brian, I still don't understand the claim from the CEO of Sony Entertainment about their strategy. I don't know what their strategy is. They haven't shown us their strategy. Their game service is a flop.
Yeah. And I mean, how many PlayStations are they selling? It's kind of hard to gauge. With this year has been crazy because supposedly every PlayStation that's been made is getting sold. Every Xbox that's being made is being, but I don't know how many. I'd have to go track the statistics of how many they're actually selling. I don't know how much of a worry they should be having. If this whole console generation gets kind of skipped technology wise, it's just what it feels like. We've talked about it before. It feels like a lot of the games still aren't being made for the new hardware. They're still being made for the old hardware. Well, why did we make a new console? Why didn't you just make, maybe this will be the transition to not having these big console releases and you just have something that, is, I think the streaming box is going to still be the end winner. And I think they're trying to create something that they can put out as put out games, because it's all going to be about the games they put out, no longer about hardware or any of this other stuff.
See, I agree with you, and I think we've talked a lot about the streaming device, the streaming service, the box being the future. Sony doesn't have any of that. I mean, they do have their, what is it called, PlayStation Plus?
PlayStation Now.
Well,
they have PlayStation Now. Plus, which lets you play online, and then they have PlayStation Now, which is their streaming and that game
PlayStation
service.
Now, from all accounts, doesn't hold a candle to Game Pass. It's a very it's a very weak attempt at it. It's a lot of older PlayStation 2 games. It just doesn't have the catalog.
Yeah.
And you've played some of those games. You said it's not the greatest experience in the world.
No, and I think that's the issue, is their service feels very, well, first of all, they started adding some games that you could actually download because they found that there were problems. There were issues with some of the games, and I think a lot of them, they were finding it to be a waste having them on the streaming service. And so some of them they have you download and actually play locally. But most of these games, it's really expensive, the PlayStation Now, for what you're getting, especially when you have a lot of these games already. It's not like it's just easier to stream it. It doesn't feel like it's running fast. When I did Microsoft's, it felt instant, and it felt exactly like it felt when you're playing local. When I played PlayStation Now, you could see the buffering. You could see that it was pausing and waiting and loading things in the background. And like it was saying, please wait, and the things would come in. It wasn't as nearly as a smooth, fluid experience that I felt on the Xbox. And I think that that's going to be the big thing, is it needs to be so seamless of experience that you feel like when you're turning on your little small machine, and starting the game and streaming it, that it feels like you're launching it on your Xbox. It feels like it's a part of it.
And just
and
looking
I think
at
here, it felt like an external service.
And just looking at their list
For
here, like the Mafia Definitive Edition, it's available now, but it goes away at the end of February. Same thing with Grand Theft Auto, the Definitive Edition, available until May, and then it's going to be gone off of the service. And this is on their home, their first game.
And that hasn't been out. The Definitive Edition, that hasn't been out that long, has it? I mean, I remember us announcing when all of these came out.
It'll be by May. It'll probably be 6 months. Would be my guess. It was six. It was probably a 6 month deal.
So I mean, I think Microsoft does at least year deals. Their game library seems a lot smaller.
This is what they're promoting.
Big titles aren't there.
This is what they're promoting. Grand Theft Auto, Little Big Workshop, Through the Darkest of Times, Death Squared, Mortal Kombat 11. Okay, that's a big game. KSP is an indie game. I don't think that's got the draw. Yeah, a couple Final Fantasy games and Mafia.
Yep.
And they've got a whole bunch of games on here, presumably, but I don't. I've never heard of these games.
A lot of these games on this one, a lot of them were just very, especially in their streaming service. They were some of their older games.
Yeah, PS2
like which is cool. Yeah, which is cool, but I want to have these big games that I feel like, I'm saving money by subscribing to this. That's what I want to feel like. That I'm not buying enough games in a year to where the service makes up for it. But if you don't carry the games that would have been buying, like that's the thing about Microsoft, I think really makes them take it on this, is the day one exclusives that they have are real. There are things that you probably would have purchased, right?
Yeah.
And you're getting them built into the service. I don't see hardly any titles on any of the PlayStation Now stuff that's a day one title that I want. Even in the list on there, none of those were day one titles. I mean, I got Mafia Definitive Edition, but I haven't played it yet, right? Obviously, it's not when I was really dying. It's just I didn't see any things on their list that I really wanted to play, or that aren't really old titles that I already have played. Half of them were pretty old.
Yeah. So looking at the pricing, Game Pass, regular Game Pass for consoles is $10 a month. The Xbox Game Pass Unlimited, I believe, is $15 a month, and then the PC Game Pass is $15 a month. The Sony
and the Unlimited
service
gives you like the EA Pass, and it gives you some of those other things included.
Yeah, and then if you look at the PlayStation Now subscription, it's only $5 a month. It's $60 a year, but $60 a year for not AAA title. And now, obviously, $6 a year, Brian, it's the cost of one AAA game. So if you play one AAA game on Game Pass on PS Now, it'll pay for itself. But they don't have those day. They're not nailing those day one launches.
6 months, maybe.
Yeah, and they're not nailing those day ones, those big launch titles like Microsoft is. I'm just not sure that their streaming service can hold a candle. And again, if the games are going to be available on Xbox too, they're going to be part of the Xbox Game Pass probably.
Well, and also one downside of the PlayStation one is it's not really across all the consoles. I've not been able to get. I didn't see anything on PC that would run it correctly. Like when I had the PlayStation Now and I was subscribed to it, I tried playing it on my computer and it didn't really work. I couldn't get it to work. I feel like with the Xbox Game Pass, you can play it a lot of different places, and I think that they will win in the end by allowing people to play it in a lot of different, not just on Xboxes and not just on things that we consider now a way to to PC and things like that. I don't know that Sony's system will ever carry over anywhere else. It didn't run well on PlayStation. Why would it run well anywhere else? The app didn't run well on PlayStation itself. Of course, that's a PS4 Pro. I mean, it should have run it just fine. It's at the time, it was their latest and top machine they had, and PS Now ran poorly.
Yeah. So now we wait and see. Will this continue to be tit for tat? Will Sony continue to try and acquire some studios? Will Microsoft ramp up the pressure and try and purchase even larger studios to do this? Yep. I don't know, but when I saw this news, Brian, it smelled of desperation, really, more than anything else. It did not seem like something that Sony wanted to do. It doesn't seem like something that's really lucrative for Sony at all. It just seemed like, holy shit, Microsoft is buying everything. We need to we need to do something. We need to acquire something. Somebody pull out a checkbook. We need to do something. And
I'm surprised they spent over $1 billion for it. Personally, I mean, I unless there's a lot going on in that company.
It's got a big player base, right? They've got a lot of users, active players.
But are they going to make $1 billion back from Destiny 2? I mean, and it's going to be counting on what they're. I just don't see them making.
I'm sure
3.6 billion is a lot of money.
It is a lot of money, but I'm sure they didn't make a bad deal. I'm sure they wouldn't have. I don't think they would have exorbitantly overpaid for it. But I don't know. I just
get a huge player base. I mean, there's a lot of there's a lot going for it, but 3.6 billion. I'm surprised it's over $1 billion unless there's another game around the the corner.
It smells of desperation.
That they view as a possible moneymaker. Yeah,
it smells of desperation and a last ditch effort to try and salvage together whatever it is. I still think, and I'll stand by this until I'm proven wrong, that Microsoft is on the easy train here. They just have to not screw it up by intentionally trying to do things and just let it go. Let the cards fall where they may. Don't do anything too radical. Just let it go, and they should be able to move forward pretty quickly with this. So that's what we've got on on Sony.
And so let's talk Microsoft here for a minute, because
sure.
I was reading an article on the Motley Fool, and they were talking about how Microsoft is now the dominant force in gaming, which is kind of what we've been talking about, hinting at, coming up for a while here now. It talks a lot about the subscriptions and getting these franchise games, them branching into mobile games, and there's so much that's just with the things that they've been purchasing and what they've been building. I thought it was a pretty good overall covering of some of the things that we've been talking about. So I put a link to that in there. One thing that I think that there hasn't happened yet is the review by the FTC.
Yeah, that's going
because I think that's going to be this is going to be a thing that has contentious arguments. People saying, man, this company's too big in the gaming world. Microsoft is already huge in all these other areas. There will be some pushback. I haven't heard any real pushback from people yet, as people being in an uproar for any reason. But I'm curious if we'll see any kind of pushback just because of how big this is going to make Microsoft. I mean, they're already gigantic, so you can't really complain that it's going to make them a monopoly. But if they're already a monopoly, should they keep adding to it? Well, what point will the government say, hold on?
Here's the thing, though, and this is, I think, what Microsoft's going to have going for them. There are literally thousands of game developing studios and tens of thousands. There are millions of games that are being produced.
Unlike major data centers that can cover what they cover. There's AWS and there's Azure.
Yeah, I mean,
there's certain things that only 2 or 3 people are doing.
Gaming
is not one of them.
Game development is not one of them. Now, again, you can make your arguments about anti-competitive nature and things like that. That's all fine. But when there are literally...
That's more what I'm concerned about, is them saying that they're creating an environment that people cannot compete in.
But here's the thing. Activision Blizzard was already big enough themselves that I don't think this changes that landscape at all. Yeah. I mean, and I think all Microsoft
Netflix makes it difficult for me to make a streaming service. I mean, can I complain about that? I mean, I can't compete with them. Doesn't mean that it's just to be something that they don't have. I think that this, is a good thing for gaming. I'm just nervous of what kind of political shenanigans we may see because there's so many dollars being moved around here, and what kind of pushback we might get. I mean, I'm ready for it to happen. They already said they're going to put all these games on the Game Pass. I think it's good, but I'm kind of curious if we're going to see more drama coming from the government now that they're going to be starting the review, because it isn't guaranteed until this happens.
Yes, that is very true. So interesting times, to say the least, Brian.
Yes. Hey, okay, so there is some Apple Epic things starting to happen again. Of course, we had the case. Things were now Microsoft, the Justice Department, and 35 states are accusing Apple now of hurting competition in this whole fight. And it seems like they're kind of coming back into this. I thought it was kind of settling, right? But now I think that this is open. I hinted at this. I remember saying I think that this might open the door to other things. Now that Epic has kind of started this, I think that that's going to continue. I think that we're going to see more and more pressure because Apple, first of all, big dollar signs. As I was kind of hinting before, when the government sees big dollar signs, they're willing to pile on because they can start, you know, fining Apple billions of dollars. Well, there's some money in our pocket. You can start. I just feel like there's going to, because the door has been opened here. I think we're going to see a lot of people coming in now after the fact, and some of it may be for good, but I think a lot of it is hoping that off of this they can create other issues. Get to where money. They say, "Oh, you're not doing this right. You're not doing this right." We'll find they did it over in Europe. I mean, look what they did to Google in Europe.
We have
They
GDPR.
find them billions and billions and all kinds of crazy
Yeah.
things. They got lots of money off of them.
Mm.
I'm worried that that's going to happen here. I'd rather have it all be healthy argument and political discussion, and for the suing, have it be to help the customer. And the second the government gets involved, I feel like it never longer always helps the customer. It's about getting money out of them and making them pay the government. Nothing goes back to the person that was supposed to be receiving the benefit, which is all of us.
Are you trying to tell me, Brian, that the federal government doesn't have our best interests in mind? Is that what you're trying to prognosticate upon me right now, Brian? Because if that's the case, I cannot take you
I know
seriously.
it's hard to believe.
I can no longer allow you to be my co-host on this show if you're going to make such an inflammatory statement about our government, Brian. That is unfathomable.
I know. I can't. We can't imagine the government would ever do anything shady. But I'm really worried that this will turn into, because I feel like Epic kind of went into it halfway serious. They didn't like the fees.
For sure.
They felt
it was
they're
a pissing
unfair.
Match.
But then they said, well, let's see if we can change it. Well, when the government steps in, it's no longer an even fight. That's my concern. Is with an even fight with the Epic and the Apple battle. They went to court. They both got a little taken away. They both got a little bit of win. With the government, there's usually no win.
Well, so I don't want to get too far off the path here, but this has always been a big argument about federal lawsuits, Brian, is that the federal government has unlimited resources, unlimited time, and unlimited money.
Yeah.
And
it's all our money.
And you as a person or you as a business does not have unlimited time, unlimited resources, and unlimited money. So the federal government can just, frankly, do whatever the hell they want. I mean, like in terms of legally and on lawsuits, because they can just fight it in court. There's literally no cost for the federal government to fight something in court. There's no cost to them to do it. If you're a business like Epic or Apple, there's an exorbitant cost for you to do that, to defend yourself or fight against it. It's not really fair, because I understand, fairness, but it's just. It just doesn't work when you can't win against a group that doesn't. And here's the thing: even if they lose, it still doesn't matter. There's nothing changes. It's the federal government. Nothing matters.
Yep.
So it's just
so here, let me give you their argument.
Sure.
Let me give you their argument, and you tell me how you think they're coming at this. So 35 attorney generals, the Justice Department, and Microsoft are all in on this, and they're urging reconsideration of that ruling where they said that Apple did not engage in unfair anti-competitive behavior, right? That's pretty much, that they, with the fees, they were not anti-competitive, but that they were anti-competitive in some of their behavior under California specific law, right? That's where they got them. So they're saying here they wanted them to reconsider its ruling as it's related to the Sherman Act. They say the district court committed several legal errors that could imperil effective antitrust enforcement, especially in the digital economy. And this is the Justice Department saying this. They said the court read sections 1 and 2 of the Sherman Act narrowly and wrongly in ways that would leave many anti-competitive agreements and practices outside of their protections. Well, if that's true, that's a pretty big deal, right? That means that there was probably some bias happening in the courtroom. Something happened where all of the law wasn't followed in the ruling, according to them. Right. And I'm assuming that the legal department possibly has some idea of what's going on, but that's what they're saying. They're saying that the district court's opinion is ambiguous, which it
Great
was.
term.
They didn't really. Yeah. And so I think that this probably, if they're accurate and this argument has some legs to it, it's possible that could go back to court. The whole Apple Epic thing could go back to court with Microsoft, the Justice Department, and all of these people on Epic's side going at Apple. I mean, imagine this. Everybody was teasing Epic. you've now got Microsoft, the largest gaming company in the world, right?
Yeah.
Joining forces with Epic, and people
And
were
the
making fun
federal
of Epic.
government,
The federal government is
who we
jumping in on
hate.
it too. I mean, yeah, yes. And so I just, there's a lot that I think will happen to this if this continues forward, especially if it gets put back into court with all of this behind it. Something's going to happen. I think it would be nice if they just made it so that you couldn't lock people into that ecosystem, like
Hmm.
make payment systems open. Since people have to pay fees for payment systems, sure, put regulations on that, right? Because that's something that you kind of get locked in. You don't have a way to get out of, especially when you're these services. They give you a few choices. Okay, figure out a way to make it to where you're not restricted by that, because that was a lot of where the extra fees and money and charges that Epic was doing early on. Remember those high conversion fees and everything?
Yeah.
Okay, regulate that so that doesn't happen, because our money, and we're dealing with worldwide games and economies changing currencies, doing a lot. There's a lot happening there. Fix that. I think that's the real argument that they need to figure out. And I think in the end that'll fix this. But I'm worried that this is going to go somewhere else. What if they start going in and say, "All right, let's fix Apple," because who knows what secret vendetta they are trying to go at Apple with this on,
Yeah.
on
And it starts with Apple and then
taxes.
who's
It could be
next.
anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, it concerns me when they go out. It could be good, but there's so much chance for wrong and things to go badly that I think will, in the end, hurt the whole gaming community and everything that's related to the fees and everything else. As long as they have someone in there with a little bit of reason, I think that's the main thing I'm hoping, is that we don't have somebody who's just going there just to hit Apple hard, but somebody go in there and actually says, "Hey, here's the parts that I see that are unfair or that could use improvement. Let's address those things, not just let's hurt Apple." Because that's what it seems like a lot of these cases end up turning into. There's not really a lot of merit, but they really want to hurt that company pretty bad or get some tax dollars or a big fine out of them.
Saul Greatman says, "As a federal government, come at me." So I guess a little bit of a little bit of threatening going on here in the old Twitch chat. Great to see you, Saul. Yeah,
It's got threatened by the
interesting.
state of Florida.
Yeah,
Here.
well, no longer the state of Florida, but
No, it's never mind.
yeah.
He's now with the federal government. So.
Yes, yeah, with the old feds. A fed, literally a fed in the chat, just post fed. So it is going to be very interesting to see how all of this goes on. As we, I don't even know what the next step of in this whole thing is. I have no idea.
Yeah, it's going to be, and that's the thing, is it's going to be the whole case starting up again. If it does, what are they going to be asking for? Because each side kind of got a little here and there. Are they going to change that? Are they trying to change? Are they going to go for something else? It'll be interesting to see. An update on something we talked about last week. Remember that Blizzard survival game we talked about? We showed a couple images of. I saw an article talking about that game has been in development now for almost 5 years.
Wow.
So they've been working on that game specifically for almost 5 years. So them saying it's in a playable state, that he's been playing quite a bit lately. It sounds like it would be accurate. So this is something, hopefully, we've been waiting for some really cool survival games to come out, especially from AAA studios, where they're polished, they're big, they're fun, there's a lot of discovery. I think part of the issue we run into with some of these smaller survival games is we play them early and the content's not all in there. By the time the game gets released, we've seen half the game, and then you have to play through half the game to see anything new. Yeah. With this, I like it when you get a survival game that you haven't seen anything really about yet. So you get in there and you go and discover and run around, and that's the beauty of this style of game. So hopefully this will be something that release in a couple years. It's not something that we're going to see 5 years. I can't imagine them being too many more years out if they've been working on it 5 already.
Yeah, I would imagine you would see some sort of early access or something of that nature, in the next couple of years, depending on what all is going on there. Brian, I do want to turn the conversation, if it's all right with you, to Valve. Yeah. Steam Decks are starting to ship. I saw a couple pictures on Twitter that they're starting to pop up in people's hands. And there's been a lot of questions about the Steam Deck. It obviously is running Linux and running Steam's OS that they built on top of it. And one of the big questions has been, since this is just a Linux device, I'll just run Windows and I can run all of my games. I can do any sort of customizations I want to do. And while in fact you can still do that, it might come at a bit of a disadvantage, because integrated support for AMD's Fidelity FX Super Resolution, known as FSR, and that upscaling tech is going to be coming to the Steam Deck for Linux users. And it should deliver a pretty big performance boost for users that stick with the Steam OS running the device, how it was intended to be used, versus those that it's not really a root or a jailbreak, but that will flash the device and install Windows 11 or Windows 10 on it. Valve developers have said from the start that the FSR will be supported on the Steam Deck. They said that FSR is already available for some applications that support it, and games that already include FSR will work as is, but also FSR support will be included as part of the OS, as a part of an OS future release. So it's not available right now, but it will be presumably sooner rather than later. And once that happens, games could potentially make use of FSR even if the games themselves don't natively support it. So this was just potentially one way that they're going to keep people locked into the Steam OS, which, let's be honest, that's going to be the premier way to use this device. I mean, yes, you can throw Windows on it. I mean, you can throw Windows on a Raspberry Pi. It's not a great experience.
But the thing is, the performance is going to be so much different. And as they continue to, get those drivers and all of the kind of unique things that they're adding to this device, Linux-wise and code-wise, I think that it's definitely going to be much performance-wise going to be much better. You're running Windows on this. They are pulling out a lot of extra features out of Windows and really scaling down the base size of Windows. They've done that since, compared to Windows 95, Windows 98. The base install of Windows and the minimal installed Windows is much smaller. I think it's much more lightweight, but it does not compare to anything to Linux. Linux has the ability to get so much more lightweight than Windows does still. And I think that in here, them also putting all these additional features and using hardware. I mean, this is basing it on, it's taking advantage of the actual hardware.
Exactly.
If they don't make a driver that is as good as this, as efficient and fast as this, then you're going to still have way lower performance even on that. Why would they make drivers and do all this special for something they don't even support? I'm sure the drivers will get out there, but I don't think it'll ever be officially supported.
No, and I think again,
put out Windows drivers for this.
Yeah, and again, it will work. You'll be able to run Windows, and you'll probably have a halfway decent experience. But this device was built for power management wise, control wise, everything was built. And I'm sure they did run Windows on this for sure to do testing and things of that nature. But this may put aside some of the pushes maybe for people to just get these things and flash it and throw Windows on it immediately. If in fact you'll get a significantly better experience sticking with Steam's OS.
Well, a lot of times the things that I've run into, because I've done a lot of mobile devices and tablets and things like that, and swap the OSs that are on them before. And usually the problems that I run into are with power management. And that's going to be a big deal on here. If you can't get that kind of seamless power management experience, then I think that that's going to be a big killer, because you're going to want to have as much battery power, because these things are going to be sucking battery power when they're not plugged in. Just running those screens, running these games, and doing all these things, you're going to want it as efficient as possible. And if the Microsoft installation is using twice as much battery, there's no way you're going to stick with that.
No.
If you only can have 3 hours versus 6 hours, that's a huge difference. That's always been the thing that I've run into with a lot of these things. When you leave the OS of the hardware manufacturer's preference, usually power management goes out the window the way you expect it.
And not even that. You look at laptops, Brian, and I don't want to get into a laptop debate, but just look at how much more efficient OS X is on MacBooks versus Windows laptops. I mean, you've got MacBooks that can run for 12 or 15 hours, and you go out and buy a brand new Windows laptop and you get 4.5 hours of battery life. I mean, Windows is just terrible. It's a desktop operating system
that are running in the background.
It's a desktop operating system.
It doesn't put processes to sleep as well. Linux is made to just run minimal. Like, it puts things to sleep. It tries to clear things down. It tries to always run at the minimum possible. Microsoft, you can have it'll run at 25%. It'll just sit there and idle at 25%, not 5%, 25%.
Cortana, Windows updates, the AV running in
All
the
these things
background.
happen in the background.
Yeah, and you can try to, you can go to group policy editor and try to turn as much of that garbage off as you want. And maybe, Brian, what somebody will do is create a Linux distro for the Steam Deck
pruned.
and do something. I don't know
probably
what
create custom drivers. Probably have to go through and really make it so it works and feels like the Steam Deck version.
Yeah, and it won't be on Windows obviously because they can't they can't strip Windows out and republish it. That would be in violation. But
they could do it in the underground, but still.
Yeah, I mean, but I could see somebody making a version of the Steam Link OS, because the Steam Link OS I believe is going to be open source. That maybe does some of the has some of the emulation things built right into it. I mean, the original Steam
or
device,
optimized versions, customized versions that have
the Steam Link
UIs, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, the Steam Link, their last hardware device, I use mine as set it up as, I don't use it as, but I set it up as a MAME emulator. I mean, these things are, you throw a device like this in somebody's hand for a relatively low price point, which is what it is. Yeah. And there's going to be a lot of really cool stuff coming out of this once this device gets broadly into people's hands.
Yep.
Real quick.
Hey, do you have a preference?
Yeah, real quick. I just want to cover, Valve's announced a couple of their 2022 sales. The Steam Next Fest is going to take place February the 21st through the 28th. There will be another Steam Next Fest in June, and then the summer sale is June 23rd through July the 7th. There's other themed sales, but those big ones are that, and then the survival sale is July 18th through the 25th. So as those become closer, we'll have more details. But
another thing, they're also changing their rules of how they do sales going forward, because there were a lot of restrictions on how these companies could do sales for their games and things. They're making it less restrictive so that a lot of these companies have the ability to do sales more often. So now you can run, like, for instance,
sorry, go ahead. No, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, for instance, now you can run a launch discount, but once your discount ends, you cannot run any other discounts for 28 days. Like that's the new one. And I think it was before it was longer, and now it was like 6 weeks. Now they've put it to 28 days. So shortening that, it's not possible to discount your product for 28 days following a price increase in any currency. So these are new things. They're less restrictive, but they're making it so that the time frame, because they don't want people running sales every other day.
Well, this is a big one here.
System.
It's towards the bottom of the list. It is not possible to discount a product by more than 90% or less than 10%. So these little 5% off bullshit sales that barely cover the sales tax will be no more. So it's going to be at least a 10% off sale.
But hey, you're not going to see a 99%. So 90% is the max. So
which is good.
Don't ever expect, if you see your game at 90%, there you go.
Yeah, and again,
unless they adjust the base price of the game.
Let's be honest, if you're selling your game at 99% off, why don't you just make it free to play and call it a day? And so have I. Just make it free to play and call it a day. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and it's not huge changes, but I think it's gonna adjust. Valve does not make changes rapidly, anyways. They're not constantly making changes. So for this is something that's kind of a big deal to them. Let's see how the people that are producing these games and putting them on sale, how they take advantage of this. Hopefully it'll make it to where we see more consistent and better sales more often.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing.
Or just out of the blue sales.
Kind of hit and miss. Yeah.
Which sounds like what this will do, because now a company they can do an out of the blue sale instead of having to wait 6 weeks. They only have to wait 4 weeks.
Because they have to time it, because you got to be careful. You can't be like, I want to do a sale because of maybe a holiday or a special event, because that may throw off my 6-week cycle. And then I can't have the sale when we're going to do this release of this other title or, whatever it is. Like, there may be some sale they're wanting to do, but let's say Valentine's Day comes up and you want to do a special Valentine's Day sale. Well, okay, you can't do anything 6 weeks after that? That seems a little crazy. A month I can understand. That prevents people from running sales every single month.
Like Michael and Dell.
Yeah, pretty much. Always on sale.
Yeah, always deep discounts on those. All right, Brian, we got a couple minutes left here in the show. Is there any big story you want to cover, or you want to tackle a couple of different things? What are you thinking?
All right, how about let's cover some random stuff really quick.
Sure.
Just a couple. So first of all, uh, let's talk about Elon Musk. So remember the brain? Have you heard about the brain chip
Yeah,
they're
that's
working
part of
on?
yeah. Yeah, he's got the brain chip. He's got the tube
They're
project
putting him
in
in pigs.
California. Yeah, they've got a whole. He's got
Mhm.
a whole bunch of stuff.
So now they're heading to human trials because they've been doing it on pigs and in various animals. And pigs, they've been able to, read the brain waves of pigs and kind of see what they're thinking. So this is going to be going to human trials, and this will be interesting because the monkey, they can play games with their mind. I have no idea how far this technology can go once you train your mind, because a lot of this will, in the beginning, is going to be very difficult because as they're with these monkeys, they're teaching them how to play a very simple game like Pong, how to focus and how to do something that will trigger this chip to then act. Well, this is going to be the question is how much can you make that thing do something with just brainwaves alone?
Yeah,
Is it going to do a lot, or is it going to be like I got to think about? I mean, I'm going to keep thinking about. Okay, it's slightly going to move the Pong thing. When I think really hard, well, that's not really doing much. If I think really hard about something, it might, cause a trigger to happen, and something might do something for me. It's got to be more than that. Like you got to interact with things. You got to be able to control things. Can you visualize things? I don't think they're anywhere near that yet. I think it's purely reading. But
it's first
where's
step.
this going? Yeah, it's the first step. Maybe 10 years from now, we'll start to see real uses of this. I'm curious. Is this going to be quick, or is this going to be something that's slowly over time? Hopefully, in my
It's going to have
lifetime,
to
we
be. I
we
mean,
see this come to fruition.
they still don't have their autopilot dealt with on their Tesla cars. I think a whole bunch of them
I
just
know.
had issues
Maybe
with their
this is their
autopilot
backup plan.
system. Oh, Christ, I hope it's better than their launch of the Cybertruck. If that's the case, I can tell you what, Brian, I won't be going for a brain implant anytime soon.
Yeah,
Hopefully, it's
I'm going to
well
be
after my
holding off.
lifetime.
Yeah, I'm going to be holding off on that. Uh, okay, another thing, Sims 4, they now have customizable pronouns. So you can go through
Oh
when you create your
wow,
family and create a person, you can now just put all the pronouns you want them to be rather than selecting from a list because,
that's
there are a
great.
million unlimited pronouns. Um,
Oh man, hold on, look at this,
okay,
screenshot. They, them, or their. Wow,
yeah,
custom pronouns. What pronouns does Jesse Apple want to identify with? Wow,
and you
that's
can put
so
whatever
neat.
you want. So, I mean, you can have the sentences go however you feel.
And as you can see, I believe this is a developer here. He's got he/him under his name, so obviously that's a big thing over there for EA. Right.
Yeah, so that's gonna be happening here. Another thing, let's cover one more. ESL Gaming is now owned by Saudi Arabia, which is kind of
ESL,
odd.
like the
Yes,
big
the
ESL
major
group.
esports
No
host.
shit.
Yes, they are now owned by Saudi Arabia.
Huh.
The Saudi Arabia's public investment fund purchased purchased them and also purchased Face It, which was another uh, esports platform.
Hmm.
So they're going for esports. I never thought of Saudi Arabia as like the home of esports, but you never know. There is a lot of money and from oil and things over there. I'm sure that you got some people, this group, which is part of the government, purchasing this with that money because they see a future in this. I would assume. I'm, they're probably posing because right now, uh, esports is probably in the worst spot it's been. Right?
It ain't hot.
No, because people aren't able to go to live events. So it's probably the cheapest it's ever been. And I bet you they're counting on a lot of these regulations falling and things starting to change. How do you set yourself up to be ready to take on esports as soon as people can get back into arenas again? Buy it now,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
Deep
they got
discounts.
into as much of pretty much the top pinnacle of esports in a single purchase because nobody's doing esports right now.
Hmm.
It's a smart purchase if they have the money and it's not, making them lose out on something else by purchasing this. But I think this is kind of a 5-year investment. I bet you in 5 years, cool things will be happening with this. Two
Yeah.
years, I bet you will probably won't see cool things from this. But
I mean, they host.
is this? Did they save the esports
I don't
industry?
know.
I
I
mean,
mean,
I'm kind of curious.
isn't DreamHack ESL?
Um,
I'm pretty sure
Yeah,
DreamHack
they
is
have so
ESL.
ESL. Yeah, ESL is headquartered in Cologne, Germany, and hosts majors, CS:GO, Dota 2, and other esports, as well as DreamHack LAN events, following a 2020 merger.
Hmm.
So, and then there's also Face It. So, and they're doing it as well. So they're definitely going for kind of a a theme here. They're going for some goal, or else they wouldn't have purchased two separate esports. It wasn't a random purchase. Uh, I'm thinking that they view that esports is going to be big.
Yeah, it will be.
People are wanting to get out. They're going to want to get out, and they're going to want to go and be face to face again. And I think people are going to be amped up for it. And if they can, they're going to make big money off of this. If we can get to where people are comfortable going to these type of things in person again,
Agreed.
or even getting it on live television. It almost got to where these were commonplace on live television before COVID happened.
Oh yeah, they were on ESPN2. They were on ABC. Yeah, they were all over the place.
And I think that that's probably going to happen again. I bet you that they're going to push it and put money into it and get to the point where it's on ESPN and it's considered a regular sport.
Yeah, I think we are.
I felt like it was so close. I mean,
it was very close
before COVID. Like we were right there, and it just
I talked about this a while ago, but I just remember being in a bar on a Friday or Saturday night, and sports bars, they got 1 billion TVs, so they've always got like ESPN2 or all of the sub channels of sports on, and I look up and there's a freaking Overwatch tournament on, and I'm like, damn, that's pretty cool. I ain't never seen an Overwatch tournament on in a bar before. Nobody's got
golf on there for me. I'd rather watch that.
Exactly.
I think you're getting a lot of the generations now that don't want to watch golf. They don't want to watch baseball. They want to watch something like that.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to get to that point because the generations that were watching those other sports are going away. I mean, just as far as, the commonplace age is now between my age and your age. Right? I mean, we're pretty much the spread of the demographic that they're aiming for.
We're also the group that is currently interacting more with the economy. It's the big demographic is 25 to 54 is the key to, at least in media, that's the key demographic that you want to hit because those are the people that are working. They've got disposable income.
They're bringing in money.
25 to 54 is your big audience. And I would agree. It's as you get towards the 54 edge, it's probably a little bit, the golf and things like that are still the priority, but 25, I would imagine you've got most 25-year-olds will be more willing to watch a Rocket League or Overwatch or a League of Legends tournament or something like that on TV versus golf, potentially. I don't know.
Yeah. And I think once you start seeing video games regularly on, from these type of things, I think you'll start seeing them in other, for other reasons. And so I think we're kind of getting to the point where games are just commonly accepted, as part of life. Where before it was always something kind of, coming in from the outside, and people always treated it like that. Those gamers. Now the average person, I think over 50% of your average people there play games in some way, whether it's on mobile. Look at the major mobile numbers. People now consider themselves gamers, when 10 years ago a small fraction would have considered themselves gamers because of the stigma and everything else. Now, people feel like even if they play only mobile games, they consider themselves gamers because you can play games that are pretty intense on a mobile platform now, or Switch and all these other things. I just think that, I think that we're in a good spot. I'm excited for these type of things and the type of things that we talk about on a regular basis to be a regular part of ESPN, to be a part of, create a whole new gaming network. I mean, we've lost so many of them. There's not really good gaming networks. What was the one? There's one that's kind of crumbling right now because of a lot of politics, I think.
Oh, G4. The relaunch of G4 is unmitigated disaster, which is exactly what I would have expected.
I want to see some ones that don't, I enjoy talking politics, but if we're going to have something like that that's talking games, have one that's neutral, because you know what? We don't have any that are neutral.
Yeah, well, the big controversy was that one girl the other day was like, she's like, oh, let's talk about the top 5 things in gaming. Something about women and gaming. And I was like, are we reliving Gamergate again? Is it 2014? Am I in a time machine? I don't know. All right, Brian. Running a little long here. Anything else that we need to cover before we get out of here?
No, I think everything we can say for next week. Got a lot of cool content for that. But if you want to find me at Brian Aldridge are we to roll out, or is there anything you want to cover first before we did?
No, I think we're good to go.
Okay, good. All right. If you want to get me at Brian Aldridge on Gab, Parler, and Getter, of course, my blog, biteoftech.com. Go to our website, infectionpodcast.com. Right after here, I'm going to fix the link so that you'll see our Discord image. But we'll put a link on there for Discord. And if you join that, we've got a news channel where you can put links for something maybe you think we're missing. Or maybe there's a topic that you think that we have the wrong idea on. Feel free to contact us through Discord. Give us your opinion. Also, we have a lot of ARC servers running on there. If you want to play some ARC, we have almost every major map on there, and a lot of other channels where you can hang out and chat about various topics. If you want to watch the show, I encourage you to do that to Twitch, YouTube, BitChute, or DLive, and you can do those live or after the fact. We also have our audio forms on the lower right, where it's, whatever device you have, we most likely have a link for that. Desktop apps, all kinds of different ways to the lower right that you can listen. And if you are going to listen, just make sure you go to the particular episode, follow along with some of the show notes. There's a lot of things that we reference, things that we show on the screen that if you're listening, you're going to miss out on. And we have references to all of those. If you want to support us, you can do that through the support tab up top. We also have infectionpodcast.com/support. Lots of ways with Subscribestar, Humble Bundle, Amazon, a lot of different ways that you can support us. And thank you very much for the support that people have already given us.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with that. Unicorn Joe and Anu both saying GG on the show. Thanks, guys. It is greatly appreciated. Brian, appreciate you as always. And we will, I guess, Lord willing, we'll do it again next Tuesday. All right?
Yeah, see if we make it there. Let's go.
Yeah, well, that's always the big question. Thanks, Brian. We'll catch up with you next week.
Yep. We'll see you.
Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen. My name is, as always, Nick Craig. You can check out my daily political antics by heading on over to nickcraig.com, live on the radio, 6 to 9 a.m. Monday through Friday. And again, all those details on nickcraig.com. If you missed any portion of today's program, you can head on over to our website, infectionpodcast.com. Find the show notes, images, links, videos, anything that we showed. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. Have a great week. We'll see you next time.